Hey Raghunath, tell everyone about our Patreon community.
Sure, Kaustubha. The Wisdom of the Sages Patreon community is an incredible online yoga resource. If you like the type of yoga wisdom and culture we share on the show, then our Patreon community is a great next step. This is a listener-supported podcast, and any level of sponsorship will unlock a wide range of live and archived classes, talks, and even workshops.
Raghunath teaches, I teach, and we have a host of other excellent teachers on topics ranging from yoga philosophy, asana classes, storytelling, Ayurveda, kirtan, cooking, meditation, and a lot more.
We even have an incredible online Bhakti 12-step recovery group.
So if you want to check it out, go to patreon.com/wisdom of the sages.
All right, let's get it on.
Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Live from Super Soul Farm, this is Wisdom of the Sages, a daily yoga podcast with your host, Raghunath, and co-host and senior educator at the Bhakti Center in New York, Kaustubha Das. Welcome to the show. Welcome to Sleeping Sunday. It's Q&A day today because we took a day off yesterday because we had a Seva party with a bunch of Zoomers. A matter of fact, a bunch of Zoomers and a random mysterious other showed up.
Who's that?
Her name's Sierra Howe. And guess where she's from? Scranton.
Oh, nice.
Yeah.
She came all the way from Scranton?
She came all the way from Scranton. Matter of fact, we were walking, doing japa. Me and Bunky were doing japa on the Jersey Shore before one program. And she was walking down the beach. It was like 5 a.m. And she stopped us and goes, "Oh my God, it's a Krishna miracle." It was 5 a.m. on the beach and on the Long Beach Island. "It's a Krishna miracle. And you're not going to believe this. I'm from Scranton." And so she's mysterious. But her and her boyfriend listen to, there are others. There's just others floating around there. It's quite fascinating.
Floating around Scranton or just in general?
Well, Scranton perhaps, all over actually, poking around. And anyway, so we had fun. We had a bunch of Zoomers come by yesterday. Chris, Yvette, Amalini, Urugaya, Ariana, David Charles, Banjo Mike, Michelle Berger.
Sean Murphy, vegan trucker.
Stellar people. Vegan Truck showed up and gave me my favorite book, which has been out of print.
Vrindavan
Days. You see this?
Yeah.
I love this book. And it came out.
It's back in print, it looks
after
like,
the author died. And I have a little section in my book about when I met the author. I met him on his deathbed. You know that?
Yeah, I know.
It's quite I tell you that story?
I've heard it many times.
You've heard all my stories many times. Like, me too. We know them all, Raghu. You got nothing for us. Somebody will enjoy my stories, Kaustubha.
Well, as long as I never have to hear the Calcutta Book Fair one again, I'm okay. You can tell the other ones as much as you want.
That one didn't make it to the book.
Okay, thank you.
That one didn't make it to the Oh, Krishna. So anyway, I had a great day. You know what was great? Yesterday was the first day I did anything physical like in 1 month. We're swinging that axe, lifting logs, holding chainsaws. And it's weird when you don't use your body physically. I woke up, actually, I went to bed like so sore. I was like, I haven't moved my body, but I felt strong and I overworked myself, but I feel good about it.
All right.
And Mara made burritos.
Oh, that's good.
And Damodar Priya sang Damodar Astak, and we all offered candles.
How appropriate.
It was a great day.
Yeah. Any announcements to make before we get into it?
It's an 8 o'clock week this week, people.
8 o'clock. Okay, another week at 8 o'clock.
Everybody's
people are
on the
celebrating.
edges.
Some people are not.
Yeah, some people are celebrating. Some people are throwing their mugs. Charlie McKinnon, Katie Bell, they're kicking their heels together.
Okay. And we got Bhakti Recovery Group today, 9:30. Would that be?
Yeah, 9:30.
9:30. Thank you.
After the show.
Mm-hmm. So if you're new to this show, we do this every week. We do this. No, we do this. We do this every day
We do it every day.
On Zoom and wherever you get podcasts. But we do it live on Zoom. If you're listening to this on Facebook, in today's Q&A day, we take questions of people on their spiritual journey. So yeah. So can I start with you, Kaustubha?
Okay, hit me.
The questions. This is from Jerry, a Texas other.
Okay.
Texas other.
I do see there's another other in Texas.
There's others out there in Texas floating around.
You're going
This
to
question
Texas,
relates
right?
to. I'm going to Texas pretty soon. Houston.
You're going to Houston? You're not going
Yeah.
to Dallas?
I'm going to Houston. I'm going to go visit that incredible temple too. My Airbnb is right by the temple.
Oh, okay. We got to visit Sarvabhauma out there.
Yeah.
All
This
right,
question relates to not being attached to the fruits of labor.
Mm-hmm.
I run a garden and an orchard on a
Nice.
large ranch. Talk about the fruits of labor.
Fruits, yeah.
And my responsibilities range from weeding, selling, picking, fence building, tree trimming. I like this person already. So in the mundane 9 to 5, we have to work. So in the mundane 9 to 5, we have to work. How do we really not be attached to the fruits of labor? I'm trying to understand it and put it into practice in my daily life, but I don't know a proper method for doing so. Please help me understand how to properly live this. Thank you again for your service. Hare Krishna, Jerry, the Texas other.
Very good question. Very practical question. Right?
Practical question. How do you not be attached to the fruits while you're harvesting fruit?
Yeah. So, setting aside what I don't know, ironic, arrangement here that he's talking about being detached from his fruits, and actually his job is
Picking
working
fruits.
in an orchard. But let's just say, okay, it's a very good question, and really what this has to do when it's, you see, spiritual life requires renunciation, but that renunciation may be external and internal, or simply it's the internal renunciation that's ultimately required. In other words, in my heart, in my mind, I need to let go of material desires. I need to let go of the illusory conceptions that I'm going to find happiness through external things. To the degree that one's able to let go of that, of those misconceptions and those illusory ideas, to that ability one is opening up to the spiritual side. Okay? So therefore there has to be renunciation. Now, to practice, there has to be internal renunciation, internal letting go of material desires. Now, in order to cultivate the internal renunciation, traditionally in yoga paths, some yoga paths involved external renunciation, right? If I want to let go of my material desires, let me leave my home, let me leave my job where I make money, let me leave the marketplaces where I purchase things, let me leave the comforts of the home, which are things that I purchase with that money, let me forget about fashion, let me forget about, let me remove myself from all of these things and practice external renunciation. I'm letting all this go for the purpose of cultivating internal renunciation. Now, what happens in the Bhagavad Gita is Arjuna's leaning this way, right? When he's out on that battlefield, he's saying, what's the point to this battle? Generally, people are battling to get money, to get wealth, to get fame, to get power. I want peace. I want I want deep internal happiness. I would like to cultivate letting go of all of this. It seems by engaging in this activity, I'm embracing all of that. And Krishna's saying, no, Arjuna, there's another way to practice yoga, right? And we can call this karma yoga. And bhakti-yoga, I don't want to get too technical, but let me put it this way. Of the 4 common yoga paths that are spoken of, people commonly, this isn't the only way you can categorize it, but people commonly categorize yoga into 4 paths: Ashtanga yoga, Jnana yoga, Karma yoga, and Bhakti yoga. And if you take the first 2, Ashtanga yoga and Jnana yoga, traditionally they were taught and practiced as practices of external renunciation, where you leave the home and you leave the job and all of that. Whereas the other 2 paths that involve work, Karma yoga and Bhakti yoga, can fit under this category as well. They involve, rather than letting go of all of those things in life, your responsibilities, the social roles that you play as a husband or as a wife or as a mother or as a father or as a business person or whatever it is that you do to contribute to society. You embrace those responsibilities rather than let go of them. So externally, you may not be renouncing. You've kept your job, you've kept your home, you've kept your family, your spouse and your children and all your different social responsibilities. You not only have you kept them, you're embracing them. You're performing them better than you ever performed them before. But you're doing it all along cultivating an internal renunciation. Externally, you're not renounced, but internally, which is where it counts, you're renounced. So now let's bring that to Jerry's situation here. He's saying, I work on this farm. It's a garden and an orchard. I'm doing all these things. He's weeding. He's selling. He's picking. He's fence building. Maybe you got to get him out. You need any fences built, Raghunath?
We do. We always need a fence. We get some property. You always need a fence built. Keep those people out.
He's tree trimming. He's doing all these things. Right. And he says, so in the mundane 9 to 5, we have to work. How do we really not be attached to the fruits of labor? What are the fruits of labor? Generally, the fruits of labor come in the form of money, right? Like I put in a certain amount of labor, I get a certain amount of money for that. What now this is the difference. Let's say, Jerry, let's say we have two different farm workers, orchard workers, right? One of them is not a yogi and one of them is a yogi. Now what's the difference? They're both weeding, they're both selling, they're both picking, they're both fence building, they're both tree trimming. They're doing the same stuff. But internally, the consciousness is different. Internally, the motive is different. And so that's where this yoga is working, right at that motive. What is it that motivates me? Now, for one worker, it actually is a mundane 9 to 5. The reason that they're working is because there's a fruit that they're going to get at the end, which comes in the form of money. And they're going to use that money and employ it in pursuit of their material desires. I'm going to make this much money. Why do I get up and go to work? My whole purpose is to get that money so that I can purchase the things that I think will bring me happiness. Whereas another yogi, another farm worker is a yogi. And that yogi has a bit of a different lifestyle, right? They wake up early in the morning. What do? They take a shower, and then they sit down, and then they start to do some meditation, right? It's a sadhana. It's a way of reprogramming the mind. Let me bring my mind to spirituality. Let me bring my mind to God. Then they sit and they read the Bhagavad Gita for half an hour, right? Absorbing the messages in there. Maybe they listen to wisdom of the sages in the morning before they go to work, right? They're listening in. They're hearing these messages that are giving them a new way, a fresh way, a spiritual way to see the world and to see their place in the world. So when they're walking to the farm to go do their work, they're not thinking like the materialistic farmer, the non-yogi farmer who's still under the illusion that money will buy me things that will make me happy. The yogi farmer is thinking, it's not that happiness comes from external things. Happiness is something inside me. Happiness is my nature, and I simply have to awaken it, right, through the practice of yoga. So the reason why I'm going to work is not so that I can take the fruits and enjoy them myself. I get the same fruits, but I make an offering of those fruits. Now, let's say in a practical sense, that person in some ways, they're spending the money on the same thing. Like in other words, I have payments to make on my home. I have food to buy for my family. My kids have to go to school and they need to be clothed and so on and so forth. But even though they're even at this point, spending the money on the exactly same thing, the way that they conceive of their home and the way that they conceive of their family, it has been altered in a sense where they think, my family really doesn't belong to me. They are all the children of God, and my service to God is to care for them. And my service to God is to provide the home for them. And my service to God is to clothe them, etc. And then with what I have left over, well, let me also engage that in God's service, right? I might give it, to serve society in a certain way. I might give it to, traditionally there are things like tree planting and well digging and so on. Like these ancient texts talk about those kind of things, because those are like social things that you could do for society that were really valuable. You know, if you live in a place where there's no waterworks and all that, then a well is like it's a really hard thing to do. You know, it's hard to dig one, and it's a really valuable thing. But the point is you're using it to serve. You're not using it thinking that with the idea that my happiness comes through service, because service is my nature. So again, the whole reason why I'm working is not that I think I'm going to enjoy separately from God. I'm going to work so that I can serve God. And that's my whole and if you work in that consciousness, first thing is that it becomes karma free. It becomes a-karma. It becomes free of any material reactions. You don't get bad reactions from it. You don't even get like pleasant material reactions from it. It just becomes free of reaction. Because it's not that you're trying to buy happiness or even make that you're doing something for external happiness. You just become happy all the time because you're always engaged in service. So it becomes free of karma, and it also becomes a very potent way, a very effective yogic method of shifting that part of the mind called the ahankara. We were reading about this the other day during the show, the sense of ego. The first farmer is thinking, I'm the center of the world. I go, I make money, and I feed the center, which is me, by buying things that will please my senses. Whereas the second transcendental yogi farmer is thinking, whatever I'm doing, I do to feed the center. The root of all existence is God. And so by serving the root, I serve every leaf of that plant, including myself. And so it's a way of shifting the ego from I'm the center of the world to I'm the servant of the center of the world. I'm the servant, I'm the servant, I'm the servant. Taking joy and even excitement in that idea that I'm the servant. And when one's thinking that way, that part of the mind called the ego, now day after day, by thinking that way, working in that consciousness every day, cultivating that deeper through one's study and one's association and one's sadhana, one's spiritual practices, gradually that part of my identity, that conception of my identity, becomes situated in reality, becomes harmonious with my true nature. When I'm thinking I'm the center of the world, my mind is in conflict with my true nature. Now that that's been gradually adjusted through my serving, through my doing the same exact job, but in a spiritual consciousness, in a yoga consciousness, now that part of my consciousness, or of my mind, my ego, is now harmonious with my true nature. Now there's a unity, there's a union between who I think I am and who I really am. And that union we could call yoga. So that's how karma yoga works, is that it's shifting the ego, it's transforming the mind to begin to identify as a servant. And maybe doing the exact same thing externally, but internally there's something very different going on. So, Jerry, you can work on that farm. You can take the fruits of what you get, whether it be literal fruits, in the form of whatever it is that you're growing, which you make an offering to God before you would eat it, but also with whatever money you get. It's not that you have to give it all away, but you should conceive of the use of it all in the service of God. And in this way, you're practicing yoga.
Give it all to patreon.com/wisdom the sages.
All right. Okay, Raghunath, you ready for a question?
Good answer.
You like that? Okay. That's what karma yoga is all about. And that's how it works, And by the way, when I say, when we say karma yoga, it means yoga wherein you embrace your social roles. So in one sense, bhakti-yoga could fit under the larger umbrella of karma yoga, if you look at it that way. All right.
Alrighty. Well, alrighty.
Okay.
You're good, Kaustubha. You're good. You're thorough. You're lucid. Huh?
Okay.
You're sharp. You're a sharp tool.
Now it's your turn. You ready?
That doesn't sound good. You're a sharp tool. Doesn't sound good.
What did you call me? All right. You ready?
You're sharp. You're sharp.
Okay. This one's coming from Scotty B. This one's coming from Scotty B.
Scotty B? It's
Yeah.
like a hip-hop guy?
Scotty B.
Wait a second.
Website.
We didn't do Martina H's.
Oh, okay. Oh, that's right. We're going up there. Okay. Let's start with Martina H.
Martina H.
Oh, this is a serious question, Raghunath. But
She's a serious
you're
person.
lucid on these topics, and you're also very honest and so on. So this is a great question for you. Ready? Last question is for Raghu. This question is for Raghu. You mention often that before falling in love with someone,
I always get these questions.
love advice from Raghunath. Ready?
I'm the love guru.
Okay. So you mention often that before falling in love with someone, one should first fall in love with Krishna.
I do say that.
Okay.
I say your next guy you should be looking for should have a peacock feather in his hair.
Okay. So can you please expand more on that, especially knowing that you're going through a difficult period at this moment?
Thanks for bringing that up.
Okay, Martina. Thanks for hanging out my laundry.
Especially because your romantic life is in shambles, Raghunath, and at your ripe old age.
Could you give us details about that? Intimate, personal details. Can you please expand more on that, especially knowing that you're going through a difficult period at this moment? How is
that knife going in and out of your heart?
Let me read that sentence again. How is your love for Krishna helping you right now? Good question. To go even a step further, how can love for Krishna help someone that goes through a difficult period after losing a child? That's a tough question.
Talk about bringing in another weird twist to the question.
Another twist, yeah. Not weird, but
well, it's not weird. But if you talk about how do you deal with love and what should we do about love and falling in love with Krishna or death of a child, it's sort of like it's sort of a interesting, disjointed question. But I appreciate it.
No, I totally get the connection. I wouldn't call it disjointed, but it definitely intensified it. It was an intensifier.
Okay, it's an intensifier. How about that?
Yeah, let's go with that. Okay, Martina continues, I've nothing but words of profound gratitude to all three of you and everything that you're offering and doing for us. Okay, Raghunath.
Look at Mara. When someone says that, Mara does that little private school face. Little old me? Little old me? Yeah, little old you, Mara.
Okay.
Oh, that's a great question, Martina
It is
H.
a great question.
It's actually a really interesting time of my life. I want to get into my personal life, but to just have that like aloneness, where the material world we were saying this week is like, is there hope in the material world or is there hype in the material world? And I'm firmly sticking to the material world is hype, spiritual life is hope. And I think one thing that we do to gloss, to airbrush, to Photoshop the material world is we place in romance or adventure and the fact is, anybody who's serious about relationships knows that that's the romance of anything. If I say, hey, Kaustubha, let's you and me go to the Caribbean, and we're like, oh, that's awesome. Let's go to the Caribbean. We're going to snorkel, right?
Yeah.
How long are you going to be in the Caribbean before you get a little bored? There's a romance period where you're in the Caribbean and you're flipping around. And then after a while, it's like, how many days am I going to snorkel here? Right?
Yeah.
And it's one of those things, unless you have a mission, a service, an offering, life can get boring real quick. And romance does that. So I'm actually really enjoying this time of just being, trying to connect deeper with Krishna. Especially if people are single, I think the best thing we can do and the least urgent thing we can do is work on ourselves, because otherwise what's going on is any trauma we've ever had, any lack of self-worth we're suffering with, any addiction we're going through, something like that, we take all our issues. Because let's face it, marital issues aren't marital issues. They're my issues that I bring to a relationship. And then I do a switcheroo. This is really interesting. Then we do a switcheroo. The switcheroo is all of my problems are because of you. That's the switcheroo. That's the interesting relational.
The old switcheroo.
The old switcheroo. So I think the best thing we could do, and the least urgent thing we could do, is spend some quality time unearthing big traumas, major traumas, or even just like refining, refining what you've got and your love and connection, where you're okay and you respect that there is a value of being by yourself. And I feel like once that cup is full, we actually have something quality to offer people. And that's what love is. Love isn't, I'm desperate, I'm lonely, I'm disconnected, my heart's broken, and I need you to fill my cup. That is the genesis of a very needy relationship where someone's going to feel like, who is this bloodsucker? Or it's going to be unbalanced. I want to go into a relationship where I feel like I've got something to offer this person because I feel connected myself. It's the reason why I don't want to have kids for the same reason as well. I'm lonely. I'm empty. I'm a zero. There's that, that analogy of 0 plus 0 does not equal 1. If you want to become one and connected, you got to become connected with your source. The leaves of the trees are connected by the roots, right? That's where they find their connection. So if I want to find connection, I want to be connected with source. I want my lover to be a sweet, charming little cowherd boy.
Okay. Now get.
What do you think about that,
no, I think you answered the first part of the question well. In other words, that's how loving Krishna comes into play with your romantic relationship.
Now, that other part of the question about, to take it a step further, can Krishna help someone go through the difficult period of losing a child? You know what? I've never lost a child. And I can't even begin. They say that's the most tragic thing for a parent to ever go through. But I will say that just having a map of who I am, what the material world is, that's what we look at when we read the Bhagavad Gita. That helps me through everything. That doesn't mean I'm like over it. That doesn't mean when I was sitting in the hospital a few weeks ago and I was just, thinking I'm going to die. I'm not going to see my kids again. I'm going to, and the guy in the room next to me just died. He was younger than me. That doesn't mean I won't go through some panic or some fear or some mental, but I could see it. I could see, okay, Raghu, this is your mind doing this. Everything's okay right now. We have some map of how to see the world, how to see our relationships, right? How to see, like, do I own my children? Do I possess my children? Are my children actually mine? We have some map to understand what life and death is. What do we possess? These are the questions that come up again and again in Vedic philosophy. Does it perfectly heal my heart for every time that there's loss or pain or a reversal in life? In my case, no. I'm no transcendentalist. I'm a transcendentalist in training. It does give me some type of what's the word?
A relief.
Some type of relief.
Buffer,
some type of
tools.
Tools.
Coping mechanism.
I started getting into bhakti when my father left his body, and it was still traumatic for me to have my father die. But it definitely was a way to understand that, this is my father's going, and he's on an evolutionary path, and I'm still connected, and it did help me actually cope with it. And you know what? Shouldn't our spiritual practice, shouldn't that be one of the qualifiers for a spiritual practice? It helps me in those great times of distress. And I find that to the degree that I apply it, it helps my mind deal with it. People say, well, it's just a coping mechanism. You know what? So are a lot of things that are just keeping further an illusion. Yeah, you can lead a little coping mechanism when you're in a little pain. But I find
it's a truth coping mechanism, right?
It's not just like I'm going to forget, stick my head in the sand. You think about that,
it brings my mind to Bhagavad Gita, 6th chapter. I'd like to quote these verses a lot because they kind of show where yoga can take one.
Yeah.
These are texts 20 through 23 in the 6th chapter. And I'll just jump a little bit forward in it, but it says, this perfection is characterized by one's ability to see the self by the pure mind and to relish and rejoice in the self. In that joyous state, one is situated in boundless transcendental happiness realized through transcendental senses. And established thus, one never departs from the truth. And upon gaining this, they think there's no greater gain. Being situated in such a position, one is never shaken, even in the midst of the greatest difficulty. Indeed, this indeed is actual freedom from all miseries. arising from material contact, right? So it's a fact that, in other words, we've seen people that have gone through extreme. I always like to give the example of Bhakti-yoga Swami, right? Who was a person who was, he was a dynamic, beautiful spiritual person, and then he got cancer. His leg got amputated, and it was such an aggressive form of cancer that, quickly he started deteriorating. He was lying there without a leg, with, his body emaciated, with extreme pain and tumors all over his body, and he was very happy, right? He was like, right? Yeah, like everyone around him was like, it was so painful for them to all see, and he was in bliss. And even there's that moment where he was chanting his japa, right, doing his meditation, and he turned to Raghunath Swami with just tears, just tons of tears, just like pouring down his face, and this huge smile on his face, and he just said to Raghunath Swami, life just doesn't get any better than this,
We need people like this. We need examples like that to look up to, in times of those life reversals. It's a great story. Do you know Bhakti Raghava Swami?
Sure.
You know him?
Honestly, I've never met him in person. I've been in
blown off.
Yeah, or his foot, right? Yeah, I think his foot.
No, his whole leg.
Whole leg, yeah. Was it a gun or a bomb?
He was like running a temple in India. I don't know the whole story, but it was attacked by
I think, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was attacked, and someone threw a bomb, and he's like blissful, and he's focused, and he's, who are these people?
Yeah. And
be like them.
But I think, like Bhakti-yoga Swami's example, it was his love for Krishna. He was chanting Krishna's name and feeling a deep connection. I mean, that's still more advanced, right? That's like you're getting onto these higher advanced levels of yoga. Even on the lower levels, before you're feeling that full ecstasy, you still have this kind of, you feel rooted to this truth that I lost my child, but my child isn't lost, lost to me temporarily from my vision, but still in the hands of Krishna, still alive and still blessed,
Sure.
And certainly there's a lot of consolation in that.
There's a lot of consolation in that, yes. Yeah. All right.
Okay.
I'm going to ask you a question now, sir. And this is from Sweet Man.
Sweet Man Simon.
Sweet Man Simon.
Do you know Sweet Man Simon?
I don't know him.
He's from Nashville. Next time you go down to Nashville, you're going there soon, right?
Cindy Lunsford knows him. Yeah, he's going to be out of town. Sweet Man's going to be out of town when I'm there.
Oh, man. All right.
Guy. I got to check in with everybody's schedule next time.
Sweet Man, you going to be around?
As one zooms out in meditation, they reach the area known as Brahman, or the Brahman effulgence. In order to envision Krishna as beyond this, it makes sense to me for him to take his universal form, which is virtually incomprehensible. But my understanding is that all universes emanate from him through his inhale and exhalations. Isn't it most important to acknowledge that this universal controller has a personality, which is exemplified through multifarious pastimes here on Earth 5,000 years ago? That's a good question. As opposed to thinking of a literal human form which created the universe. As opposed to thinking of a literal human form which created the universe. If I chose to meditate on the form of Vishnu or Narayan, is that okay as long as I am in awareness of their source at the point of the supreme personality?
Okay.
It's a deep thinker, Sweet Man Simon.
There's a lot there. So let's start to break it down here a bit. So he's mentioned the Brahman effulgence. He's mentioned the universal form of the Lord. He's mentioned the form of Lord Vishnu, and he's mentioned the form of Lord Krishna. All of these are various energies or manifestations of sweet baby Krishna, right?
Yep.
All of these are coming from, according to Srimad Bhagavatam, right, which is understood to be the culmination and the full explanation of all the Vedic literature. All of these energies are coming from Krishna himself. Now, some people are most attracted to that personal form. And some people are attracted to the form of Lord Vishnu, which according to Bhagavatam is a partial manifestation of him. And some people are attracted to the idea of merging into the Brahman effulgence, and some people are attracted to seeing nature as God. It's not that any of these is wrong. they only become limited when one thinks that that's the end, until you get to Sweet Baby Krishna, right? And then that's the complete. So first let's talk about the universal form. There's different ways that the universal form is is explained. In the Bhagavad Gita, Krishna shows his Virat Rupa, his universal form, to Arjuna. Also in Mahabharata, we see Krishna does the same thing with to Duryodhana one time. It shows him a demonstration, some kind of vision of Krishna showing that everything that exists is emanating from me, and he gets some kind of divine vision of that. But Bhagavatam also speaks about conceiving of this universe, of nature, as the body of God. So when I see the mountains, I say, those are the bones of God. When I see the rivers, I think those are the veins of God. It's what's the word that's used for that? It's kind of like a metaphorical, but a tool for bringing one's mind to God. So that's another thing, Simon also mentions this form of Vishnu, that from him come all the different universes. So this is the point. If we're following in the Krishna Bhakti tradition, if we're following in the lineages that teach from Bhagavatam, they're saying that this form of Bhagavan, this form of Sri Krishna, that within that form, it accommodates all different types of devotion in the most deep and intimate and beautiful way. And it's from that form that everything emanates. So naturally we're inclined to meditate on that form, meditate on Krishna's pastimes, meditate on Krishna's form, right? Meditate on his name and so on. Now, when we think of Lord Vishnu, we think, oh, this is how Krishna manifests in the material world. He manifests in some places in the spiritual world for people that their inclination is to worship with awe and reverence, not in that more intimate, personal way. And that's beautiful and that's fine, if that's your inclination. But he also manifests in this world as Vishnu. It's God taking care of business. It's God creating the universes. It's God maintaining the universes. It's absolutely beautiful. We love to meditate on that form. The Bhagavatam is going to bring us to meditate on that form again and again and again. But why? The ultimate reason why Bhagavatam is sharing all this information about Vishnu is so that we put together the idea that when we hear about Krishna running around the forest with his friends and the cows, and even running around at nighttime in the groves with the girls, that we don't think that this is an ordinary boy, but we realize this is the boy from whom the form of Vishnu comes from, which creates and maintains all the universes. So Bhagavatam is helping us understand who Krishna is by explaining Vishnu, right? Vishnu is, when we think of God, is like everything's coming from him, and he's supporting he's within the heart of every living being. He does that in the form of Lord Vishnu. So when we think of Krishna and we know that Vishnu is a manifestation of Krishna, well, then we understand who Krishna is more clearly. That these pastimes are not ordinary. They must be very special if this is the origin of Lord Vishnu doing it. And so that's how we conceive. For the Krishna Bhaktas, Krishna, his form, his name, his pastimes, these are all his qualities. That's what we meditate on. That's what's most important to us. That's our goal to understand, and so on. And all these other manifestations of him are important in relation to him. And they're and if you find some, I'm also very interested in meditating on how Krishna manifests within the heart as Paramatma, and how that vision affects my life in this world. But all along, there's the idea that still beyond that, there's the spiritual realm beyond this. And that's ultimately where I want my deepest meditations to go. Therefore, we have a month like Kartik, where it's like, hey, this month, let's spend some let's dedicate a lot of special time to thinking about Sri Krishna and Vrindavan. Let's not neglect that, right? Let's focus on that, especially in this month, on the sweetness of those pastimes. So, Simon, I hope that's helpful. You can always reach out if you have any more questions about that. I think it's a very interesting question, and I hope that helps a bit. And you would like to add anything
Simon.
to that, Raghu?
No, it was beautiful. Sweet man Simon.
Sweet man. Is he here with us today?
Yep, he is.
Okay. Good. All right. I got a question for you, Raghu.
What's we got?
This is a question come from Scotty B.
Scotty B, the hip hop. Sounds hip hoppy, doesn't it?
It could be.
Yo, I'm Scotty B.
It's like a Star Trek hip hop kind of thing. Scotty B.
Star Trek. Oh, Scotty.
All right. He says, hello. I'm new to this stuff. I'm looking for a closer relationship with God in Krishna consciousness. I'm wondering if you could recommend any books that are written in a simplified form.
These are all the questions I get. I recommend any books.
What are you talking about? You just had a deep personal question about how being in love with God helps you with losing a child.
What are your good? What are the good books? Is that the question here?
He says, I'm an old hardcore kid from the 80s. I love your podcast. He wants recommendations for books that are written in a simplified form to help him understand all of this better.
Well, I get that because sometimes reading those Vedic literatures are a little thick. They're a little thick. I couldn't read the Bhagavad Gita for a while, a long, long time. I tried repeatedly. After that first verse, I was like, I've had enough of this. I can't make it through these. I can't make it through Sanjaya, Dhritarashtra, Kurukshetra. Those 3 words. I was like, okay, it's over. I'm going to try something else. It just did. But you know what? I will say, and this isn't, just self-promotion, but this podcast is spoken in a pretty down-to-earth way. I would listen to the podcast repeatedly. I would read Raghunath Swami's book or listen to his audiobook of Journey Home. That is my go-to. That is the new autobiography of a yogi. Because if you read autobiography of a yogi, which is a really interesting book, it's still written in like this sort of like older English. I found that even hard to read when I was younger. But Raghunath Swami it's just an easy read. It's a page turner. My kids read it. It's
and
great.
The Journey Within as well.
And the Journey Within. That's just so damn easy. Yeah. And I'm going to just push this book up right here. Nowadays, right?
Nowadays.
He's
not just asking for fun books, though.
Hayagriva.
But that's not exactly an explanation of Krishna conscious philosophy.
No, but it's just like a fun read.
It's a great read.
It's like a fun read about, and it's like sort of a travel book.
You know what I recommend, Raghunath? That's also a fun read, but explains, really, as you read through it, it explains things very well, is the biography of Srila Prabhupada, Prabhupada Lilamrita, right? Which we gave to Mara, but she still hasn't read all the volumes yet. Or has she?
She hasn't read it yet, has she?
I'm still reading it. I haven't finished it yet.
What does that mean, still reading? Does that mean
when
that you started it and you put it away?
Started it?
I'm on volume 2.
Oh, okay.
2 out of 5.
Okay. That's pretty good.
Yeah, that's pretty good. But that's a great read, and it explains so much through it. And then, also there's the book, The Science of Self-Realization. That's a really good one to start with, too.
Good, simple read. Yeah. Because they're like interviews. Yeah.
Yeah, that's by Srila A.C. Bhakti-yoga Swami Prabhupada. Science of Self-Realization. Anything else you throw in there?
My book that's going to be coming out will be a good, easy read, written by, an imbecile, just sort of like flowing out of my mouth.
Right.
I keep it real simple, not by choice. It's just, that's all I got.
Okay. Next question.
Right. Next question.
Look who this one's from.
Oh my God. Let me see if she could.
Is she
Today,
here?
Nicole is getting initiated.
Or has already gotten initiated.
I told her to be I should be the first one to find out her name. And I'm guessing, I'm deeply not guessing. I'm channeling that her name will be Narayani. Narayani. So she's one of our regular Zoomers. And she lives in Berlin. No, where she lives? Zurich, but she's getting initiated today in Scotland.
So I don't think she's normally with us, but my guess is that she's in the ceremony and everything.
She's in the ceremony right now.
Festivities right now.
Yeah. I'm excited for her.
Yeah.
And she's really just very serious about her spiritual life.
He's super sincere.
She's just and a very sweet person, just like a sweet, wonderful person.
Absolutely. And she's being initiated. Her guru is who we had on the show not so long ago, right? Kripamoya Prabhu.
That's right, Kripamoya Prabhu.
Genevieve Harrison's father.
Yeah.
Amazing, right?
Imagine if you love Genevieve Harrison as an artist and then you get initiation by her father. Wouldn't that be interesting?
That would be very interesting. You know, I shared a
It's
little
like I got initiated by Mick Jagger's dad.
I shared one of those Instagram stories last night. It should still be up there on our Wisdom of Sages Instagram page. But it was one of the, Genevieve was doing one of those things where it's like ask me anything kind of things.
Yeah.
And someone asked her, I forget the exact question, but she said, when I feel fear, I listen to Wisdom of the Sages podcast.
What?
Yeah.
What a sweet thing to say, Johnny.
Yeah. Yeah.
All right.
Okay. Question.
All right. Question from Nicole Seifert. Hare Krishna, dear Prabhujees. I was recently on a very long drive from Berlin to Zurich. That's when she was with us, I think.
Yeah. Well, after.
Back to Zurich, listening to the Mahabharata, and covered the part where the Pandavas were in exile and Arjuna had to leave for 1 year.
Mm-hmm. Remember
Right.
that?
Yep. So there he met a girl and gave her a son. And then after the year, I'm sorry. And then he
Wasn't
left.
she gave him the son, but yeah.
Yeah, but we get
Either
the
way,
idea.
I suppose.
There he met a girl and gave her a son. And then he left to later steal Subhadra and bring her back to his brothers
Kidnapping.
after the year was over.
Mhm.
There he also took Draupadi as his wife, which he shared with his brothers. Since the Gita is part of the Mahabharata and has so many teachings for us, I was wondering what we are meant to learn from Arjuna having several wives and even meeting with a girl only for the purpose of giving her a son and then leaving. I don't mean this in a disrespectful way at all. Maybe I don't see the bigger picture, but I really would like to know what we're meant to take away from these stories.
Okay.
Good question.
Yeah.
It seems
So in
very
other words-
obvious. Have multiple wives with multiple children. It's why
Just
are we even
have kids and
questioning
move
this?
on? Right?
Can we just like move? Next question, please.
Okay. So I guess it's the way the story goes is that Arjuna and his 4 other brothers were all married to Draupadi, which was an unusual circumstance, right? And there's a whole explanation in the Mahabharata of why that was. It's said that, and you know what? This is a clue to answering this entire question. Do you know who the 5 Pandavas were in their previous manifestations?
You asking me?
Yeah.
Well, wasn't Arjuna Nara Narayan?
Well, let's not even go to Narayan because that's like
right.
he can be that and a million other things, right?
Well,
They were what? Here's a hint. What post did they all play at some point in the past? They all held a post. You don't know. How could you not know this?
I don't know.
You're such a Mahabharata guy.
I don't know.
They were all Indras. They had all served in the role of Indra previously. And it said that in her previous life, Draupadi, I forget the circumstances, I'm sure someone out here probably knows it, that Draupadi had, you see, little Karuna knows, she's saying Indra.
That's the Mahabharata comic books, man. All
That's
the
right.
details are in
That's
there.
right. She probably
All
read
the
the comic
details.
books. And so at one point, Draupadi in her previous life prayed 5 times. She said, I want Indra as a husband. I want Indra as a husband. And she said it 5 times. And so that was part of the explanation of why Draupadi, I think it was Vyasadeva explained to Draupadi's father and to the assembled people that this is meant to happen. She had prayed for it in the past and so on. So in any case, then there was a rule because now you have one woman with 5 husbands. They had a rule that like, if you're going to do that, you got to set some boundaries, right? So it's like, when one of the Pandavas was alone with her, you had to kind of like respect that, right? And say, okay, give them their time, right? Give them their quality time together and don't. And so they made a rule that if someone steps in and interferes when she's alone with the other, then that person would have to go on exile for a year, right? You with me?
Yeah.
You familiar with
You
this?
gotta go in exile
Yeah.
if you're with, yeah.
And so what happened was there was someone came running to the Pandavas, came running to Arjuna saying that there's some thieves, they're stealing my cows right now. Help, And Arjuna, he needed to get his bow.
Left his bow and arrow in the room.
His bow was
Right.
in the room, yeah, with I think Yudhishthira and Draupadi, who were alone together. So he busted into the room. Excuse me. Grabbed his bow.
He
Went.
knocked, I think. He knocked first.
I don't know if he knocked or not, but in any case, he retrieved his bow. He went and took care of business, and then he came back and he said to Arjuna. He said to his brother Yudhishthira. He said, "I have broken the rule. I have transgressed the policy that we had set forth, and so now I must go on, on a exile for a year. So please bless me. I'm about to go." And Yudhishthira's like, "No need. That was a special
You have to give it your bow. We get it.
Yeah, but he said, "No, I'm gonna carry it out." So then he went on pilgrimage for a year, and so now he's already married to one woman, Draupadi. In those days, it wasn't unusual for kings to have more than one wife, but one day he's swimming in the Ganges River, and a aquatic goddess type of character named Ulupi grabs him.
You sound like you've never seen aquatic goddess before.
No.
No.
So this Ulupi grabs him underwater, pulls him to an underwater kind of realm, right?
Yeah.
Which I believe that originally her plan was like she was actually meant to play a role in killing him or something like that, but she kind of falls in love with him, and even in those days, like the warrior code, there was a dharma for warriors that, in one sense, the act of sex, was a marriage in itself, right? And so Arjuna, in a sense, marries her. She does have a son, but she's kind of grants him, like, go ahead, go forward. I will raise this son. I guess this is the point that I want to make. I'll give another story. And this may help clarify it. One time, Arjuna also, he went to the heavens, right? And he went to the place of Lord Indra, like to the planet of Lord Indra. And at that time, a beautiful, what would you call
Urvasi?
Urvasi,
she was
like one of these heavenly damsels.
A heavenly damsel, yes.
This heavenly damsel, Urvasi, approaches Arjuna romantically. And Arjuna says, you're very beautiful. You have all wonderful qualities. I practically
She said, "I saw you looking at me."
I saw you.
No,
and so, okay. And so he said.
But he was looking at her because he was related to her, huh?
That's right. He said, "You have been with my father, Indra, so I can only relate to you as my mother." And she's saying, "No," and this is my point. She says, "No, that's the dharma for the earthly people, right? But we have a whole different setup of dharma in the world that we live in, right? And those rules don't apply. So in no way would you be breaking dharma to be with me." And he continued. He said, "Well, that may or may not be, but the fact is, in my mind and in my heart, I can only see you with a motherly type of respect. And I can't see you in that way." She got angry and she cursed him, right? So this is my point. The Pandavas...
Dharma.
Huh? Yeah, it's another level of dharma, and these rules don't necessarily apply to us at all. That's the point.
Dharma doesn't apply on the higher planets.
Yeah, and even and for Arjuna and for Ulupi, these are characters that are a bit in a different realm, and so when we consider dharma, there are many considerations, and what we should learn, there's so much that we can learn from Arjuna, from his words, from his behavior, and so on. But we should also learn that when we are like Arjuna, right? Then maybe these rules will apply to us. But how much are we like Arjuna? Are we capable of fighting, hundreds of thousands of, single-handedly fighting hundreds of thousands of? Are we personally, blessed, by Krishna, in so many different ways? So he's working on a different level. I guess that's ultimately my answer, right?
Yeah,
he's working on a different level.
I don't know if there's anything we can really take away from those stories of a king thousands of years ago who had multiple wives. I don't think there's really anything we can take away, except there were some, I'm sure whatever it was, those codes of conduct or relationships were, a king would do it all with appropriate dharma, but it's hard to understand that dharma. We can't even understand what it was. My mom never
taught you dharma.
I can't even understand like my mom's generation.
Okay.
Yeah. Like 100, like she's almost 100 years ago, 95 years ago. It's hard to understand that entire generation.
Yeah, yeah. So what?
My parents didn't have premarital sex. How can that's hard for anybody even to grasp nowadays. But that's just how they did it. What to speak of 5,000 years ago when you're an emperor.
I was thinking that even, for instance, in the Bhagavad Gita in the 3rd chapter, Krishna begins to speak about duty, right? And how one has to be dutiful in life, which means that you have to give back and so on in different ways. And there's certain dharma that everyone should follow, different rules that regulate our lives. But then he says, for a self-realized person, they have no purpose to fulfill in the discharge of prescribed duties, nor have they any reason to perform such work, nor do they have any need to depend on any other living being. Meaning that for a certain person that's fully detached, it's not necessary for them to perform the prescribed dharmas that other people have to do, because the dharma is meant to bring you to that level, right? The purpose of following these regulations in life is to bring you to that level of detachment. So similarly, like the dharma is prescribed in different ways for different kind of people. And someone operating on Arjuna's level, there's a whole different system of codes and so on, and as well as for Ulupi. She had she was coming from a whole different level. So I think that's the only way we can really look at it. All right. Should we hold this one? Maybe we run out of time. It is
we're out of time.
59. Yeah.
Let's hold it for next week, Kaustubha.
We'll hold it. We're going to hold on. All right. Anything else we got to say?
No. Mara, any words of wisdom for us, Mara?
Mara G?
No.
What are you doing today? What are you cooking something in there? You got some event going on?
Yeah, I got some people picking up some food in a few minutes.
What's the menu
today?
I
have a ginger cauliflower soup and then like a savory tart.
Ooh.
Whoa, this is just like for some event or something, or what's going on?
Yeah, there's a group. There's a Wan Dharma Center nearby to us, and they do host meditation retreats, and they asked me to cook lunches for them.
Oh, look at that.
But
that doesn't sound like a full lunch.
Super Souls competition.
Oh, okay.
They're the Buddhist group.
They're pretty wonderful. So.
We're gonna have them in the softball game. We're gonna crush them.
And where are your workers? Why don't we get to see them?
They're chanting their japa right now. They're in the temple room upstairs chanting their japa.
I see. Okay.
She doesn't let them in the door until 16 rounds are done.
Oh. Hey, you know what I can announce today is that this past week we reached out to get leaders of these discussion groups that we're going to have.
No.
And and so like we've got quite a few volunteers. I think we had 100 people sign up for the first kind of beta version of it.
Yeah.
150 people. We tried to limit it to 100, but we got 150.
They're banging down the door.
Which means we need about 20 group leaders. We've reached out to people. They're coming in. And so we hope within a couple weeks or so we're going to get these groups started, and then we'll run that for a few months as the beta version. Then we'll open it up for more people to join it. So we're on our way.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
All right. What's happening? Thanks everybody for joining us.
We're at 8 a.m. tomorrow, right? Eastern time.
Yeah. Thanks everybody for joining us. Q&A day. Once a week we do this. So you got a Q? We'll try our best to give an A. Just write to us at wisdomofthesages108@gmail.com and you can get on the list. Mara goes through the file, picks out the good ones, throws away the bad ones. Just kidding. We try to answer all of them. And if you're on our Discord chat group, who's on Discord? Is that just for Patreon members or is that everybody?
Yeah, Patreon members.
Patreon people. Yeah, we give you special privilege. If you want to join our Patreon group, if you like what we're doing, hey, come on down. Patreon.com/wisdomofthesages. We appreciate whatever you give. It helps keep this boat floating. Within that, we have a group, our Bhakti 12-step recovery group, which is a great partner in what we're doing here. Having people who are in recovery or going through recovery. Basically, it's the same thing as going through a recovery group, except it's an online forum, and our higher power is a sweet little blue baby. What do you think about that? Thanks, everybody. It's a beautiful day for Kartik, and it's a beautiful day for a beautiful day.